I'm vice. Oh, thank you. I guess we're recording now. I'm Hal Glatzer. I'm vice president of the New York chapter. It is, I believe, the largest chapter in MWA with more than 500 members. Uh, and it is absolutely the largest geographically in terms of the number of participating locations. We actually spread over 5 states. We have New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. Sometimes it feels so unwieldy, and we've been asked so many times to see about local meetings that we have this year begun the process. We were not breaking up the chapter, but we're going to encourage local nexuses of members to meet near themselves, someone in northern New Jersey, someone else in southern New Jersey, someone in Connecticut. Doug Harrell is going to host Philadelphia and the nearby parts of Delaware. Um,
And that's coming up on March 29th for those of you who are near Philadelphia.
Thank you very much. We're also going to do, as we do every year, on the 14th of April at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We're going to have our big chapter-wide Zoom meeting. I'm sure it will be as unwieldy as ever, but I think we are taking steps to reduce the unwieldiness of having such a large and, frankly, very diverse membership. Gary, I think you're involved with groups upstate. Gary, who's based in Buffalo. Um,
Yes.
and I'm going to put in a little plug for my particular bailiwick. I host the author readings that we hold every other month. The next one is coming up on April 5. And if any of our members would like to read, aloud from their work, please email me. I'll put it in the chat if you don't already know it, hal@halglatzer.com or info@mwany.org, which will also reach me if you put author reading in the subject head. And now I'd like to turn it back over to Kate and thence to Tracy, our speaker.
Hal, thank you so much. My name is Kate Hall, and I'm doing programming this year for our local chapter. And I'm so excited today to be welcoming Tracy Clark. She's joining us today. Tracy is a native Chicagoan. She's the award-winning author of the Cass Raines Chicago Mystery Series and the Detective Harriet Foster series, both set in Chicago. She's a multi-nominated Anthony, Lefty, Edgar, International Thriller Writers, Macavity, and Shamus Award finalist. Tracy is also the 2020 and 2022 winner of the G.P. Putnam Sons Sue Grafton Memorial Award, the 2022 Sarah Paretsky Award, the 2024 Lefty Award for Best Mystery Novel, and the 2024 Anthony Award for Best Paperback Original. She is a member of Crime Writers of Color, Rogue Women Writers, Mystery Writers of America, Sisters in Crime, and sits on the board of the Midwest Mystery Conference. Tracy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So today we're going to be talking about location in crime writing and the use of setting, location, and how that adds to the conflict in our mystery writing. So you're based out of Chicago. Did you grow up in Chicago?
I did. I've been here my entire life so far. I just plan to be here until I croak.
Um, yeah, I've been to Chicago a couple of times. There's really no place like it. And when I read your books, I really am instantly transported there. Um, so I thought maybe we could start just talking a little bit about your Cass Raines and your Harriet Foster series. In both of those series, Chicago really plays such a significant role in the books that the city feels like a character in itself. So how do you approach when you sit down to write the books, how do you approach incorporating the city's unique atmosphere and the neighborhoods and the culture? And how does that influence your plot and character development?
Well, I think setting sort of grows out of character because it is one. It's one of the like tent poles of fiction. We have a few character, pacing, dialogue. Setting is one of the big ones because it's a character in and of itself. And so when I'm starting a book, one of the casts or either Harriet, I'm looking for where the character is when I start the story because that will tell me where I need to go. Because character and setting are intertwined. They're together. You can't have a really specific feel for a place unless you know how your character feels about it. They're both based in Chicago. Chicago is a complicated city, but you don't give your reader the overview of Chicago. We don't give them stats. We don't give them the population. We don't give them the demographic breakdown. You get small. That's how you do it. So you get character level, what is important to your character, what your character sees when they sort of walk out of their door in the morning. Little details of a neighborhood, a favorite hot dog spot, a church, a block, a neighborhood. That's how I sort of look at it when I start. Where is Harriet at this point? Where does she need to go by the end of the book? Where in this city means something to her? What can she look out her eyeballs and see as she's wandering around the city doing her job? What sort of springs to her mind? Those things, little things. And I think that's how you sort of make a place a character because you make it specific, you make it personal, you make it very small, very detailed, very specific, and meaningful. So that's what I'm looking for when I start. It's what I'm looking for all the way through a book, all the way to the last page. Not just a place, but a specific place, not just a meaningful setting, but somewhere that sort of means something to the character, means something to the story, moves the thing along. Everything has to move forward. Character, setting, location, dialogue, all of it forward moving, or else it doesn't work. You don't want to put anything on your page that just sits there like a dead fish because that's wasted time. That's wasted time, it's wasted space, it's wasted effort, and your reader will disengage. Engagement is the primary thing you want. You want your reader to sort of dig in and sort of latch onto your characters. And you do that by giving them a life, as full of a life as you can give it. And setting is one of those things. So I'm always thinking about where, I'm always thinking about why, I'm always thinking about what about this place as opposed to that one. And I wanted to sort of get to the end of it where I could not pick Harriet up and put her someplace else because she wouldn't be the same person. I sort of look at Spencer in Boston, Kinsey Milhone and Santa Teresa, specific places. If you took those characters up and moved them somewhere else, they would be different people. So that's the connection you want. You want it to be as tight as you can make it, as specific as you can make it, as tailored to that character as you can possibly do. And if it takes you 5 or 6 drafts or 10 or 12, that's what you sort of have to do. I spend an awful lot of time on setting and location. Because you have to sort of think about it. It has to be part of your story, part of your character. So that's how I do it. I don't have a plan because I'm a pantser. I don't have like rules that I follow. I just sort of feel my way along. This character needs this. Where can I put her to sort of get that out of her? And that's how I sort of pick my way through.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you said, well, 2 things. I love hearing that you're a pantser. That's my apologies to everyone else who uses an outline. But I think, what struck me when I first picked up Hyde is, you have multiple characters, but each of those characters is interacting differently with the city. And
Yeah,
it's
they're looking through different eyes, aren't they? They're different people.
exactly.
And what Harriet might see when she goes to a scene of a crime is something different from her partner sees. In Hyde, Harriet sees that boy at the base of the bridge, and she's thinking something different than Lee is thinking because they're different people. So I have to incorporate all of that too. It's not just one perspective. We have different characters. They're coming from different walks of life. They're different ages. They're different ethnicities. They're different genders. And they're seeing the city, the same city, in different ways because they're coming at it from a different worldview. So you have to sort of keep all of those balls sort of bouncing in the air at the same time or spinning the same plates at the same time. That's what makes hard writing so hard. I mean, if it were easy, I mean, we'd all be, it's just a hard thing to sort of coordinate because you have all of these elements that you have to have working together in order to get this story rolling. And, that's kind of the stress of it, tension.
Right. And that tension really does come out with the way that each of the characters interacts with the location, but also how you manage to, you said you don't make it like a travelogue, but yet when I read those books, I do feel like I'm getting a real tour of the city. And, I think that's really the balance that we all kind of seek as writers to reach. I mean, do you have any particular, nuts and bolts tips for that? I mean, do you say that you start big, you maybe have an info dump about a lot of stuff and then whittle it down, or, what's your process?
I don't do it info dump. That's one of my pet peeves. I just don't do it. But I'm looking at character. So when I approach a scene or a chapter or something, I put my character on that page. That character has to accomplish something either in that scene or that chapter that moves the story or the plot forward. So now I have to think about what's going to bring whatever that thing is I need out of this character. Is it place? Is it dialogue? Is it conflict? Is it tension? It has to have all of those things, but it has to be in a place that sort of pings off of that. So if I put Harriet at the crime scene, it's a very specific place and she's got encountering very specific people. You notice that I put people on that bridge that brings something out of her character and her conflict. It's the place that is sort of a show place here in Chicago, the Riverwalk. But bad things happen in all, even bright places. So there's that connection. So we put her in a bright place, a bad thing has happened, and then in sort of to raise the stakes on this, to put on that bridge people who are looking at her from a perspective that you might not sort of anticipate. So she's not only got the scene, she's got a partner that she doesn't want to work with. She's got this horrible thing has happened in our show place. And on the bridge, she's got people that she's sort of hired to sort of protect and serve, giving her crap about it, what the job that she's doing. And so she's got it from all sides. You've got the tension and the conflict, all of that swirling. Churn is what you want. You want the churn because that's where the good stuff is. And so when I'm thinking about where I put that first body, I consciously put it in a sunny place or a bright place that you wouldn't imagine something horrible happening. Okay. Then I gave her something on top of that to sort of exacerbate her stress and her conflict in this situation. And you always piling it on. You're giving almost your characters too much to bear. And then you sort of giving them too much to bear, give them more than that, and then see where they are. And so I'm always thinking about where can I put it that's going to be meaningful? Where can I put her in what situation that's going to give her tension and conflict and stress, piling it on as much as she can take and see where she is. And then also moving your plot along. You have to do hold all of these threads together. They all have to move at the same rate, the same pace. And so all of those things are going. So I'm thinking about everything when I start, everything.
Oh, I just love what you said about placing the body in a bright and sunny place. I don't know if the rest of you caught that, but I think that's just the most amazing, pro tip that I think I've heard in a long time because, I think automatically we go to those dark places, right? If we're writing about crime fiction. But as we all know, bad things happen to people all the time. Why not at the Riverwalk? Why not at the jewel of the crown of the city? Like that in itself, like you said, that's a lot of tension. And her partner just wants to get rid of that, right? He just wants to sweep it under the rug. He doesn't want to spend any time with it.
Yeah, so you're always looking for ways to either compliment or sort of do the opposite. So put a murderer in a circus. That's kind of cool. I mean, something where you wouldn't expect it. So you're always thinking about little ways, little angles like that, where you can sort of either turn it on its head or have it sort of flow together with your character. Either way is good. Either avenue you take is valid. It just sort of is story-based, character-based, moving forward always.
That's so interesting. If any of you have any questions for Tracy, definitely put it in the chat, and at the end of our discussion, we can get to that. But if someone has a pressing question, please, raise your hand and I'll call on you because I think, there's just so many, she just made so many good points there that if we want to sort of use it as a jumping off point for the discussion, let's do it. So is there a particular, is there something about an urban crime novel that's so different, besides obviously the trees and et cetera, from like the small town novel? And what, besides the fact that you grew up in Chicago, what sort of drove you toward that urban? Because it comes with its own challenges, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I guess I chose it because I live here and I know the city pretty well. I'm also sort of a dark person in terms of the fiction that I like to read. So I couldn't very well write like a Miss Marple mystery. It probably wouldn't work well. But Chicago, I think, is the perfect place for crime fiction. I mean, our last four governors have gone to prison for fraud. Okay, there's corruption, there's street crime, we have gang crime, we've got drugs, we've got all the things that a big city would have. And you have to sort of, all crime fiction is a morality play sort of worked out. And so this is the perfect place for it. Crime is here. I'm writing about crime. If you cannot write a crime novel here in Chicago, you can't write one because we've got everything you need. We've got bad people, we've got good people, we've got corruption, we've got mayors who do Lord knows what. City Hall is corrupt, crooked. I mean, this is the place to write crime fiction. So I didn't have to look too far. And then sort of finding material is easy as pie. I mean, all you have to do is open the paper and there's a dead body floating in the river or something stupid. And that sort of starts an idea and then you're off and running. So guess I couldn't write, well, I could write a small town thing, but I would have to understand what a small town is. And I don't think I know that. I don't have that understanding. I have never lived in a small town. I don't know what small town people think about or worry about or how they live. And I think you need that information in order to write a convincing crime novel. You have to know who the people are. You have to know where you are setting your story. You have to know what a small town feels like, sounds like, smells like, how the people interact with one another. I don't have that information. So I set the stories where I live, with the people that I know and the people that I've encountered. And then I sort of find people every single day, right in the grocery store, an interesting character there. And I sort of build stuff around that.
I read somewhere that Chicago actually didn't do too badly during the Depression. A lot of people didn't do too badly there because of all the corruption, because of the underground ways that people were making money anyway, so
Yeah, we had speakeasies, we had it all. We had brothels. We had, in fact, the book that I just finished now takes place the end scene in one of the bootleggers' tunnels under Bronzeville. So
Ooh.
yeah, we've got everything here. Al Capone, come on.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. It's such a rich history, but it's true because, you have this city that's in the middle of the Midwest. And I think when people on the coasts think about the Midwest, we don't think about it in terms of Chicago, but Chicago really is it's really the backbone of the country, really. And yeah, it's interesting. I mean, so would you say that the neighborhoods that sort of your characters frequent, do you think that has has a lot of I would say, impact on how they sort of write the story for you? In other words, do you get lost in their sort of what they're experiencing every day, and that sort of takes you down a road that maybe you wouldn't think that you would have because of just really where they're coming from?
Well, that's where the specificity comes from. We've got 77 neighborhoods in Chicago, and each one of them are different. They were founded by different people, working class folks. And depending on where you go in the city, south side, west side, north side, east side, you're encountering different vibes, different sounds, everything. So yeah, when I move these stories around, uh, I write as specific and as small as I can possibly write it. A favorite restaurant, a street that might be sort of famous, kinds of people who live there, old people, young people, immigrants. Okay, so I'm looking at everything, everything. And if I can find something interesting that sort of pings on whatever the character is going through, that's what I'll use. And then I'll move it around and do something else for somebody else. But that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that is detail oriented, something that's very small that only maybe a resident would know, but it gives the reader an idea of what kind of neighborhood that is, as opposed to something else. And so I'm looking for details, I'm looking for places, I'm looking for feels. I'm looking for feels. So yeah, it's a hard thing to sort of do because you have to sort of actually get out there and do it. Drive around. I might have forgotten something in a neighborhood or whatever. I go and take a look at it. That's how I found the Riverwalk. I walked there on my lunch hour while I was still working in the building where I work. And so I saw the gap in the fence. I wouldn't have seen that if I was not walking that trail. And so that's what you have to sort of do. You go out there, you see, you smell, you hear, you listen, how people talk, how they dress, where they go, where they don't go, all of it. And all of that pot, that melting pot, is your material. I sort of look at it as an easel, painter's easel, and all those little colors and all those little things, you sort of dab and sort of mix, and that's how you get that color, that flavor, that vibe. And you have to sort of work at it. I do, at least I do, because I spend a lot of time on where and why and what it looks like and what it smells like.
Gary asked this question, do you use actual businesses and or restaurants in your work?
I do, but I changed the names because I don't want them coming after me. So, the restaurant is there. It's on the street where the restaurant is. I just named it something different.
Especially if a crime is committed there, right? You don't
Like that. It doesn't keep people the customers coming in.
right, right. That's right. So I'm going to sort of jump a little bit because I'm really in awe of the way that you have been able to use theme in your series. And I think that this is something that the really great crime writers do. You're not just writing about good and evil per se. You know, there's sort of a through line of, I want to say morality, but it's different. It's even different than that. It's sort of more, it's a more practical view of, you know, what a person has to do to really stay alive and to thrive, you know. And I was just wondering, is that part of something that you do as you're writing it, or do you go back later to sort of say, hey, you know, I need to, you know, maybe beef that up a little bit, or?
Well, since I don't have an outline, I sort of put my character, Harriet, on the page and I follow where she goes. I know where she's starting from. I've given her a lot of trauma to begin with when we meet her in Hyde. She's got a lot of losses. She's lost a son. She's lost a husband, divorce. She's lost a partner that she's worked for years with, tragically, suspected suicide. So when I put her on that sidewalk in front of her new department, she doesn't know whether or not she wants to go in or not, whether she's got what it takes to sort of continue with this police work or whether she should just run and do something else. And it starts there. And then I've got a character arc to sort of work with because she's got to get from point A to point B and beyond. And the only way she's going to do that if I put her in a situation where she has to do something, she has to solve a problem, she has to solve her case, she has to get along with the new cops, she has to find her way back to where she used to be 5 years prior to when this book starts. That character arc sort of gives me theme as I go from book to book. Because I think the theme in Hyde, if I have to sort of pinpoint, I don't really think about it as I'm writing it, but I think it sort of gets there on its own. It's sort of resilience, uh stick to itiveness. She can't bring herself to sort of give up. She's not where she needs to be, but she can't give up and she's got to move forward. uh Themes come as the books progress. She gets a little better in book 2, book 3, book 4, a little better, not much, just half turn of the screw because we characters like people don't make drastic life changes. They sort of muddle their way through as we all do. The book that I just finished, book 4, if I had to sort of pinpoint a theme again, it would be acceptance because she's gotten to a point where she knows she can't continue to live the way she's been living. There has to be a change beyond what she's done to this point, and she's ready to move forward. So always you're looking for change. always you're looking for those sort of universal emotional humanity sort of based things. We want them to be as human as we can possibly make them, even though they only exist on the page. We want book people to be almost human. So we give them all the flaws and vulnerabilities, all the problems and the mess that they have to deal with, and then we see how they get better. And so I don't think about it as I'm writing it. It sort of happens on its own because I'm moving this character forward page by page. And she's learning stuff as I learn stuff about her. So eventually I get there. First drafts are messy and garbage, as all first drafts are. So in order to get such fullness that you're talking about, it takes me maybe 2 or 3 passes to go back, fill in or some holes that are there and enhance things that should be enhanced. So you're doing revisions, you're filling it up, you're making it as big as you can possibly make it. So it takes a couple of passes for me.
It's so interesting that you say that, that there's a progression, but I have to say that when we meet Harriet on that first page or two, we already know that this is a person who has really more than most people could handle.
Yeah.
And I love how you do that. So, and it's not, and it's just done so elegantly, the way that we enter the novel that we really feel, not only are we rooting for her, we are, we're really empathizing with her. Talk about, it's like starting a new job, all the deaths that she's had to deal with personally. Her partner is gone, she has to deal with a new partner day one. I mean, it's just so wonderful how that's all, how you sort of just drop her right in it right from the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's what you sort of need with characters. The basic thing that we need as writers is to sort of draw our readers in, to sort of grab them by their collars and say, this is an interesting character, follow her along. We want them to invest in Harriet's problems and stick around long enough to see whether or not she gets better or whether she gets what she needs. And that takes a lot of work to sort of figure out what readers will ping on or what they will sort of grab onto, but we need that grab. If we don't get the grab, and they're not interested, they put your book down and they pick up something else that they might enjoy better. And you don't want them to do that. So you have to spend the time to give them a character that's worth hanging on to. If we give them enough problems, it's not that I think I probably did pile it on a little bit too much, but then we put her in a place where she's got to go either left or right. She can't stay where she is. She's either going backwards or she's going forwards. Fiction is always forward, always forward. So we figure out who she is by all the troubles that I've given her. Is she going to sink or swim? Is she going to give up or is she going to go? We have to find that out. And we do that page by page, keeping our readers as interested as we can make them interested, that they'll keep reading and get to the end and enjoy the read. So that's all I'm hoping for.
You said something that really struck me, which is because, and I think it does deal with location. You say you're moving her forward. You're moving her
Always.
forward.
And is always forward. You cannot have anything on your page that is stagnant, that does not move. Characters have to move. Dialogue has to move. Fiction dialogue is different from, run-of-the-mill, out in the street dialogue. It has to be specific. It has to be tight. It has to be meaningful. It has to move everything for everything. Nothing goes back.
Yeah, I mean, you do it so masterfully. And until we're sitting here having this discussion, I didn't realize what you had been doing. You know what I mean? I just picked up the book and I was rereading it obviously for tonight, but I had read it a while ago. And I just realized, oh my goodness, look what she's doing here. I mean, it's like, it's not just a book that I love. It's a book that I can go back and as a writer, I can say, look what Tracy just did here.
Yeah, it surprises me too. As I said, I'm a pantser, and so I hit that laptop at 5:30 in the morning with maybe a slight clue of what I'm going to do. But I'm following these characters. I kind of know where they need to go emotionally and physically, depending on whatever the story is. But I want it to be as real and as human as I can possibly make them. I want them to be distinctive. I want you to be able to, as a reader, to sort of read a passage of dialogue and know whether or not that's Harriet or Lee or Samansky or any of the other cops that are on their team. I want them to be their own people. and with their own problems and their own flaws and their own vulnerabilities. And that complexity is what you want. You don't want a character that's going to lay on your page and be one-dimensional. And whatever you have to do, how many passes you have to take in order to get that multi-layered fullness, that's what you kind of have to do, which is why, writing is so hard. I mean, if we could sort of do it in one take and be done with it, I would really love that, but it's not going to get you what you need. And so you need that investment in terms of the time and the energy it takes, how far you have to dig down to sort of get at the core of what this character is, who they are, what moves them, what do they fear, all of those human things that we have, your characters have to have. You might not use it all in every particular scene that you write or any chapter that you write, but you have to know what that is, what motivates them, what sparks them, what lives in their heart. And then you have to sort of convey that to your reader. And however you do that, there are many writing rules. I don't follow many of them, because you have to do this on your own. This has to be your thing. And every writer is different. Every writer has their own process, and whatever works for you and is absolutely correct. There's only one rule that has to follow. It has to be effective. There's effective and ineffective. You don't want ineffective. You want effective, and however you do that is kudos to you.
One of our members, Linda, has a question. Linda, did you want to ask it now?
Yeah. So just so you know, my son works in film, and he recently was having a conversation with an acquisition editor from a major publishing house. And knowing his mother's a writer, he always, kind of, pokes for information. So he had said, this editor said that the publishing house was looking at a particular fiction writer, no name, but based upon their location of the book and getting the other locales within the town on board, thinking that would boost sales. In other words, it was kind of like, not only that we want to choose a good location, but specifically using the entire town in the location to help sales. And I was just wondering if you had ever heard of any publisher in acquisitions. I mean, I know as readers, we all like to go back to our favorite locations, but from a publisher standpoint, have you ever heard of that there's particularly choose books that are in locations that they can have the whole town help to boost the book, or along those lines? And the second part to that, and you had kind of already said that to Gary, I was wondering about liability about using locations, because I had always been told change the names because of liability as well. So two-part question. Thanks.
No, I haven't heard about them sort of choosing books based on location. I do know that publishing houses sort of tend to sort of stick with the big ones like LA and New York, because they're glitzier and sexier, and they figure they can sort of spread it out there in the marketplace. But small town stuff works too, for me as a reader and also a writer. So their decisions, I think, are based on whether or not they can market it, whether or not they can sell it, whether or not they can move it around the country and also internationally. And I think big cities sort of take the reins on that. I mean, they are more sexier and bigger and more interesting, I think they believe, than a small town would be. But small town stuff, if it's good, sells just as well. It has to be good though. Early on, when I was first starting out, attending conferences and things like that, and trying to learn as much as I could learn, there was a woman who set up on one of the panels and said, "Well, how do you sell a book?" And the moderator said, "Write a good story." And so that's what you have to do, whether it's based in Chicago or New York or Los Angeles or wherever. If it's a good book and it's set in a small town or a small municipality, internationally, wherever, it's going to find a person, a publishing house, an editor, an agent. You just have to keep doing it. And what was the second part of that question?
You kind of answered it when Gary asked his question, but I was talking about, I was always advised, because of liability, not to mention to be very careful when using real towns, obviously real stores, even a town, I was told by a literary attorney, because if you keep having murders, for instance, in Cabot Cove, then there's going to have a negative connotation, and the city itself may not like it. A smaller city is going to, maybe contact you and say, hey, we're trying to, especially places like Vermont now, right, that's trying to attract people to move there. they might not want to have books written about their state saying, gee, there's a lot of murders up there. So I just, and you kind of answered it by saying you changed some names, but
I
I
do
was,
just because I don't want the hassle. You never know what a company or a restaurant or a building is going to do. If I put a real address in a book and somebody actually lives there and I put a body on their basement, I mean, they don't kind of like that stuff. So yeah, I
yeah,
change the names of the buildings. The streets are the same, but I find out what the address might be and use different numbers. You just do it so that you don't have to deal with that aspect of it. You don't want that hassle, liability or no. Just it's easier just to name it something different. The restaurant, you can sort of take their decor, you can their menu, whatever. You can use that, but name it something else. It doesn't hurt you. It keeps you safe. Something you can sort of move on from.
thank you.
It's so interesting because like the bear is set in Chicago, right? And, I think that people, um, those things kind of shift, Hollywood and the entertainment industry kind of, it kind of goes with the wind on that kind of stuff. But um like a show like The Bear, have you seen it?
Yeah.
Do
In
you
fact,
think,
I put that restaurant in the book that I just handed
oh,
in.
did you? That's so fun.
And here's the thing. If I don't put a body there, okay, and I don't intimate that this is a crime-ridden establishment, uh, using that name might be okay. So I could say Mr. Beef, all right, because they're just eating their
Right.
lunch there. If something tragic happens, if I've stuffed a body in their, I don't know, their restaurant, then that's a little sticky. So it depends, I guess, how you use it. Normally, I stay away, name it something different. Mr. Beef, simple scene. They're eating Italian beef for lunch. I don't think they'll mind that mention. They might even like it to see it in print. But it just sort of depends on what you're writing about, what the scene is about, whether or not you think they might sort of take offense or something. You have to sort of feel that out yourself.
Um, so Charles asked a question. He said, how does a setting or location move forward? I think we touched upon this, but maybe we can kind of expand on this. I would think that location is the canvas upon which we build our story.
Yeah, but that canvas only means something if it means something to your character. So if your character goes into that setting, whatever it is, and nothing happens, they ended the scene just the same as they were when they began it. That's a dead scene. It's not going to work. The setting has to propel your character to move forward. Your character has to move forward depending on where you set them. They all have to move together. They all have to work, and they all have to go forward. So that's how a setting moves forward because your character moves forward. It has to.
And I guess at the heart of it, really, it's the conflict that comes out of whatever their situation is.
Absolutely. It is conflict on every page. It has to be. Tension, conflict. That's the gas that moves your story forward. Um, Settings can complement, they can be something, they could be an obstacle, a snowstorm. Your character has to find the killer and he has 5 minutes to do it. There's a major snowstorm keeping him from the next phase of what he has to do. That setting, that obstacle, that thing, that obstruction is the tension, is the conflict. You need it.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, that the weather in Chicago is, we were talking a little bit about it before we started this session, but the weather itself is going to cause a problem for your characters.
Yep. That's the obstacle. That's something else they have to fight against. That's another hurdle. That's another thing, a rock on top of their back. It's everything. It's just as complicated as you can make it, as tension filled and conflict that you can have. That's what you need. That's what I always sort of go for. And then when I feel that I've sort of gotten too far, I go a little further because, why not?
Yeah, I mean, the characters would say, why are you doing this to me, Tracy? But
I'm helping them in the end. I'm helping them get to the next phase.
yeah, of course. And and it's this isn't really about series, but because you've written such amazing series, I thought it was interesting how you were saying about just turning the screw a little bit on Harriet and over the course of each book. So you were sort of like she still has problems, but you were saying in book two, things might be a little bit better for her. Then the boom falls again in book three. I think that's interesting. I think that's something that, people would love to write a series. I know people love reading series, but what keeps us engaged in that?
Because you want to find out whether or not she gets what she needs. That's the whole thing with characters. We give them a problem. We get our readers invested. We get them interested in who these people are and care for them, whether or not they could be the good guy or the bad guy. But if you're interested enough to figure out or to stay around to see what happens, to see what happens to them, you've won, because that's what writers want. But characters don't have to move really quickly. In fact, when you're writing a series, you can't have them make major leaps, into mental health, fitness, when you've got 3 more books to write about them. If they've solved all their problems in book one, where are you gonna go? So you have to sort of have this arc be sort of a long arc. Give them a problem in book one. They have to change by the end of book one, but a little better. They've still got the same basic things, but they haven't quite figured it out yet. Book two, we pick it up. They learn something more. They have to learn something different. They get a little further along on their journey, but they're not quite there yet. Book three, a little further still. And then there's got to be some kind of resolution, but not the complete resolution, because you never know if you're going to have another book and you don't want them to solve all their problems. And what do you got? You got a happy person. We don't want to read about happy people. Happy people are boring. Okay, happy people don't have stuff to deal with. They're happy. They live in a small village. Let's say Miss Marple, St. Mary Mead. She's got no problems. There's afternoon tea at 4 o'clock. She eats a little scone. Well, she might find a murderer, and then she goes on with her day. Okay, I'm writing about Chicago. This has to be complicated. It has to be churnful. There's got to be some stuff going on. There's got to be grit. There's got to be crime. There's got to be stuff that doesn't go right. In fact, stuff doesn't go right 99% of the time, but they keep chugging along because they're cops, and that's their job, and that's what they have to do. And so you have to keep it complicated, multi-layered. You have to give them stuff. You have to have them not understand things, not get things first time or third time. But it has to be a journey, because that's what life is for all of us. I mean, nothing goes right. We might be flying high one day. Next day, the bottom falls out. It has to be the same for book people. Stuff happens, and they have to deal with it. If they don't deal with it, then they're in a different spot. But we have to keep it moving. We have to figure out what's wrong. We have to keep it moving. So I try to put all of that in there, because that's what life is. And you don't want it to be boring. You want it to keep churning and going. And you want to get to the end in a sort of good spot. They've solved their case. They haven't solved their life. We'll see what happens in the next chapter.
Yeah, Daniela just said, the happy ending is a dead end for authors, which
Nobody wants happy.
right. So Doug has a question. He said, what was the hardest setting that you've used? Why did you use it, and what made it so difficult?
The hardest setting. Oh, probably the last one I wrote, the book that comes out next December. I used one of the bootlegger tunnels under this gray stone. And I had to figure out, actually do a little bit of research in terms of where these tunnels were, because Al Capone sort of operated on the south side of Chicago, which is my neighborhood. But I had to figure out where and what these tunnels were used for. And then I had to figure out a way to put my cops down there, and how they would get down there, and where these tunnels would go, and what the purpose of the tunnels were. And so after I sort of got a sort of modicum of information to sort of get me started, then I had to put them in a dark, narrow tunnel that's under the buildings that they had to sort of climb down to. And it was a lot of, I guess, a lot of work, actually, to sort of figure out how they would do this, if they would do this. Would Chicago cops go down in bootleggers' tunnels to find a killer? I wouldn't, but unfortunately, that's their job. And so I had to figure out how to realistically, even though it's a little fictionalized, find a way for these cops, Mike, Harriet, and Vera, to go down into these tunnels to sort of find and hunt for this killer, and then get out in one piece. There was a hostage down there. There was a killer and her enforcer down there. And there's a lot of balls to sort of keep in the air. So that was probably my hardest one because it involved a certain amount of research that I hate to do. I just like to start writing and make it the best I can. But I had to go back and sort of figure out where the tunnels were, why they were there, who put them there, and whether or not they were still there. And in fact, they are still there. They're closed up, most of them, but you can sort of access them if you had a mind to and you're really determined to do it. And so I would say that one.
Did you end up going down into the tunnels? Did you say?
Nope, I don't like rats. Okay, so that's probably the one. Bad enough to have a rat. We live in Chicago. It's bad enough to have one sort of run over your feet as you're walking to the parking lot.
Yeah.
Okay, that happened to me one, but I'm not going down any tunnels. I'm not that brave. I can imagine what a tunnel might be like. I've seen pictures of the tunnel as I'm doing this research on this scene. A tunnel's a tunnel. I can sort of imagine the other stuff.
Yeah, I think that really brings up a good point though, because a lot of it, I don't have to have been in that tunnel to enjoy it because in the same way that you don't have to be in that tunnel to write about it, but you do have to know what your characters
Absolutely.
feel like in that tunnel. And that's what makes it so interesting.
That's the connection between character and setting, all right? Because we have Harriet. Harriet's fine with the tunnel, no problem. Okay, Lee is a little claustrophobic, and so now her in the tunnel, being back up to her partner with a killer on the other end of it, poses a problem because we've got two cops feeling different ways about this tunnel, and they have to accomplish the same thing, but without anybody getting killed or getting sort of seriously hurt. So yes, I wasn't down in the tunnel, but I had to sort of get that tension and conflict by giving them opposing views of what this setting is, how they sort of advance through this tunnel, one fearing the tunnel, one not giving, that much of a care about it, and how they sort of work together to sort of get it done. So yes, that's the setting, that's the character development, all of it intertwined. It has to work, it has to move forward, it has to sort of give that reader a satisfying end.
Yeah, I'm not a big tunnel person either. I don't like outer space and I don't like tunnels. Let's see. George asked the question, you mentioned jail and prison early on. Half of my work in progress takes place inside the old Ohio Penitentiary in downtown Columbus, Ohio. Any thoughts on the pros and cons, no pun intended, very good, of using such a setting as a character?
I think it's great. I mean, what's better than a prison? All the stuff that happens in a prison, come on. Yeah, that's already made. Depends on what your characters sort of feel about it, right? Are they sort of claustrophobic like Lee is in that tunnel? How do they feel about where they are? If they're convicts, they probably feel a lot different than the warden would. And so you have to sort of factor in all of that stuff. But prison's fine, perfect. It's kind of like a locked door mystery. You can't figure out how it was done because it only takes place in this one room. Prison's the same thing.
Yeah, I mean I'm already in, George. I want to read it already. That sounds good to me.
Works for me.
Um, so because Chicago has, it definitely has its own personalities in terms of the neighborhoods. It has, it has its own perception of itself, right? As an entity. Being from Chicago is definitely different from being from New York or Los Angeles or another big city. How do you hope that, in other words, do you feel like you need to represent Chicago in a certain positive way, or do you feel that it's your responsibility just to present, Chicago for what it is? Because I know a lot of places, it's like, New York has to say all the time how great they are, how great, I guess we should say we are, right? We would have to talk about we're the best, when, clearly it's very hard living in a big city like New York. So how do you sort of walk that line?
I present it just the way it is. All the grit and crime and corruption and all the things that my characters have to deal with, it's real. I've talked to cops who work here. They have to sort of deal with a whole lot of stuff, not just their job, the department that they work for, the city that they work in. 2 million people who live here. All of them are different. Crime is everywhere. But they also have the bureaucracy of City Hall and government. And so all of these factors factoring in to how they do their jobs. And so I'm trying to present that as truthfully as I can, as realistically as I can. And I don't pull any punches. I don't try to pretty it up. I don't put flowers where there are no flowers. I don't sort of gussy up neighborhoods where I know the neighborhoods are not gussied up. I tell it like it is because that's what it is. And I want to be as realistic as I can. So I do that with characters. I do it with setting. I do it with the way my characters speak. We have characters, these cops, some are from the Southwest side. They talk quite differently than people from the South side or the North side. And I put that dialogue in the way they speak. So I want it to be real. I want it to be truthful. I want it to engage with readers. I want readers to sort of learn who these people are by how they speak and how they present themselves. I want it all to be as real as I can make it. I know they are not real people in truth, but I want them to feel real and sound real and act real and, present themselves as real people.
Right, because I do think readers know when things aren't quite ringing true. When
I
you're
think,
trying
yeah,
to force something.
readers are far smarter than we are. And if we put something on that page that doesn't quite scan, they'll pick it out in a New York minute and and call you on it. And so you don't want that to happen. You want to just tell your story, tell it as the best you can, as truthfully as you can, and give them characters that they can relate to.
So I have a question from Vicky. She asks, was Lee claustrophobic from the first, or when you adopted the setting of the tunnel, did you go back and plant earlier seeds about her claustrophobia, or conversely, did her established claustrophobia lead you to the difficulties of the tunnel setting?
The tunnel came first, and I figured what would sort of give me some sort of gas to sort of heighten the scene. It would probably work if both were fine with the tunnel, but making one not fine with the tunnel sort of gives you another level of uh, closeness, uh, feeling of them being trapped. And so, yeah, you always want to give yourself something different on top of whatever you've given them, just to sort of turn that screw, like I said, just a little bit more tension, more stakes, more whatever. In fact, this is not the second time that I've put Lee in a sort of difficult position. I've locked her in the basement before. I don't know what I've got against her, but I needed that for that scene to give her something to fight against. Again, with setting. Her partner is here up on the other level fighting with a killer. She can't get to her because she's locked in the basement with a broken leg. Now I've got to get her from that place, that setting, up rickety stairs, right, through the door, and to back up her partner up here who's fighting for her life. So tension, conflict, churn, whatever you can do to sort of get that thing going. You want tension, you want heightened, you want everything. You want everything to work. You want it to be, your reader to sort of be on the seat of their pants, trying to figure out what's going to happen next. And so whatever you have to do, whatever you have to put your characters through, you can be mean as you want to. They'll forgive you in the next book, but you want to sort of give that extra thing.
Yeah, I think that, I was thinking of another, it's a movie that takes place in Chicago, right? Isn't Die Hard in Chicago? Isn't it one of the towers there? And they have this poor guy is having the worst day ever, and then they make him run through glass.
See?
Right. It's just, but yeah, but until you explained it to me, I'm just kind of in awe how you've been doing it in the books, because you're right. You're just building this tension upon tension upon tension. And then just when you think it's going to be okay, you throw something else at them,
Yep. Nothing can be easy. Nothing for your characters can be easy. If it's easy, you're not interested, because if it's easy, anybody can do it. You want them to be at their almost end. They can't take any more, but they certainly find this place where they can sort of go one step beyond. But you want them to sort of go through it. And whatever you have to sort of imagine for them, whatever dastardly deed you can have to befall them, that's what you should do. Always go for the extra thing.
Yeah. Oh, I was just corrected. Die Hard is in LA. Okay.
Yep. Always think conflict, always think tension, always think putting them through it.
So does anyone else have a question for Tracy? I really, thank you for putting your questions in the chat. Does anyone have anything that they want to ask her? Just Gary.
Yes. About using restaurants and things like that, I usually would go and ask people Or I would say, hey, I want to set a scene here. And usually I don't put like violent scenes there that would detract from the restaurant. But I found that lots of people like that and say, oh, yeah, sure. And I ran into somebody I knew recently and had not seen for a number of years. And she talked about one of my books and said, I think we know the same people. Well, one of my better half's best friends is a woman who was born in Vietnam, and she and her four sisters put together a business, Five Sisters Sandwiches. And I put them in one of the books, and I changed their names slightly. They didn't mind. But so I think, yeah, because I think that is, I know Anne, as she was saying. And so I find sometimes that readers kind of like that sort of thing. And have you found people saying, oh, I like that restaurant, or I could see that intersection because I've made that turn, that sort of thing?
All the time. In fact, the last book signing I went to, there's a restaurant that I sort of put in one of the books. I think it's Fall. And they're having their breakfast there before something else jumps off because I always give them something else. And I changed the name as I normally do. And I had a reader come up and say, well, that sounds familiar. Is that such and such? And I said, yeah, that's it. I put it in the same place it is. It's got the same decor that restaurant has. Cops go there for breakfast all the time because it's right down the street from the police station. But I just gave it a different name, and it works for me. I don't go to the restaurant beforehand and ask them if I can write about it. They're there. I can use it. But whatever. Unless I put a skeleton in their closet or something, I think they're pretty much okay with it. There's no shootout out in front. I think we're good.
Well, Tracy, I just want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. Again, we were with Tracy Clark. She's the award-winning author of several series that Harriet Foster and I'm sorry, it's
Rains.
Cass Rains. I apologize. Don't have my notes. But I just want to thank you because I really feel like even though we started talking about location as a character, this was sort of a deep dive into character.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really just so beneficial for us as writers. So thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me. It was good night. Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, everyone.
Wonderful.
Bye-bye.
Bye.